This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
You are listening to Copy Chief Radio, and today we have a special guest, which I'll let Kevin introduce.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, I'm gonna let him introduce himself, because that is part of the discussion here. How do we describe people? We're talking about race relations in marketing today. And look, I want to quickly say that one of the things I love about this industry is how it's gotten so colorful over the last 5, 6, 7 years. Because when I started in this, over a decade ago, it was all white dudes. You'd go to a conference, man, and it could have been any industry where white males dominated, and slowly you started to see more women, and that was cool. And now, if you go to the right events, it's beautiful, man. There's people from all walks of life, and it's much more interesting now. So this topic came up in Copy Chief about leadership and race relations, and Max Rouzier, I'm saying it wrong still, Rouzier, started this. Sorry, Max. This amazing conversation. You and I both know Max from our communities. He's very active in Copy Chief. He's very active in Ben's World. He's a super smart guy. Always fun to have Max around. And so, Max, tell us a little bit about who you are and what inspired you to start this thread.
Wait. First, tell us how to pronounce your last name.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's Rouzier. It's French. You say it with a French accent. It makes it easier if you have that French accent.
Rouzier. Got it.
Yes, and that's actually, part of who I am. So let's make this perfectly clear. I'm Max. I am a black man who is Haitian descent. My parents are from Haiti. They emigrated to America. I have a brother that is proudly gay, and I'm proud of him for being okay with that. And I love to date self-possessed, ethereal women. That's how I identify. And that's important because if you're familiar with me and my work, I teach people to own their voice. And I do it by owning my voice and talking about things that are important to me. And the reason I posted the thread was that I recognized that you had an amazing Truth About Marketing podcast episode with Doberman Dan. And what was brilliant about it is, unprovoked, I never asked you, and I'm pretty sure no one else asked you, you went out and you talked with him about police brutality. And I was just like, wait, what? And I already love you, I already admire you, but in this case, it was two white guys bringing up a subject that's affecting us all. There isn't anyone untouched globally by police brutality, one way or another. And these are two white guys talking about this topic, and in a way that actually humanized it. Because a lot of people make it about personal or political issues that aren't related to the topic. Because fundamentally, it's like, why are we not able to sympathize and empathize with people and be more mindful as law enforcement agents to, remedy a situation before it escalates? Yeah,
awesome. Wow. Great. Okay, good. So let's dive into the topic. We have a lot to cover in a little bit of time, but you describe yourself, as a black man first. So here's one of the issues where people just get hung up right here is like, as a white dude, people don't know how to describe black dudes. And I say he's a black dude or they're that.
Yeah.
Right.
In fact, it's better for you to call me black than to call me African American, because I'm not African American. Not every black person is from Africa. In my case, I am Haitian. I was born in the States, so I'm actually American, but I'm Haitian descent. I'm Haitian ethnically. And so to call me black, I take that proudly. But if you were to call me African American, I would be offended, because it's like, I have more direct lineage that I can point to and like even bring you to the island and introduce you to some people. And so the safest thing you can call anyone, of course, is always black, or better yet, just say, hey, how do you identify? Because it might not even be racially or ethnically. Yeah. These are the ways I choose to identify myself. And if you think about yourself, and Jonathan yourself as well, how do you like to identify? It might not even be racially at all. Being that you're white males, you probably don't have to think about it too much.
I am Puerto Rican.
You see?
Puerto Rock from around the block, baby.
But yeah, we all choose these styles, and then there are people that'll be like, "Oh, I'm a marketer, and that's how I identify. Like that's my all." Like, and it's like, cool, that's your thing. But what matters most, I believe, is not feeling afraid to say, "Oh, you have a unique personality trait. You look black to me," or what have you. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, just asking that question: how do you like to identify?
Yeah,
and
I like that.
Do that, you really get to understand it from their perspective, not yours.
But even when white folks are describing friends of theirs who happen to be black, it usually doesn't matter and need to come up in the context of the conversation. But should it have relevance, though? I think a lot of times go out of their way to try to find the most PC description. And to me, that usually ends up sounding more racist. And, it's almost like, the colored folks, like really appreciate, like, what are we saying? Like, but that was the term once that sounded, I know people in my lifetime who thought colored was the right term. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it just gets crazy. So, absolutely. And that's why I want to jump quickly, Max, to Black Lives Matter. Yes. Because I think a part of it is people get so hung up on the title, the idea, and oh my God, it's like one of those topics that's so hard to weigh in on or have an opinion about because just the wording of it gets people so confused.
Yeah, actually, Pandora took a big hit after they sided with Black Lives Matter, so it's definitely important to talk about. So Black Lives Matter is not just a hashtag, it's an actual organization that is well maintained with a hierarchy that is situated globally, but mostly in America, to make sure that we are protesting these issues and giving voice to the people. And we call it Black, and it's not me specifically, but it's called Black Lives Matters because we recognize the importance of, giving power to marginalized voices. Mm-hmm. And I like to do it this way. Let's say your house is burning down. Naturally, you're going to call the fire department. And what are they going to do? They're going to put the fire out. But what if they came to your block and they started watering all the houses and said, all houses matter? That's what we're talking about. We're not saying people are bad and we only got to take care of this one group.
Yeah.
We're saying that, hey, right. There are people that need some support. Let's recognize them and see what they're going through.
Yes, thank you. That's a great analogy. I love that. That's the best one I've heard. Gosh, people get so hung up on, oh my God, all lives matter and white lives matter. Oh, I know. We know that already.
Exactly.
But there's a point to this.
That's what we deal with every day. And here's another part, and I'm thinking about it from I'm a big fan of Gene Kelly. I grew up watching his movies. He's the dancer. He was one of the first guys that says, hey, I'm a man. I have a body. I'm going to dance like a man instead of trying to dance like a woman. And because of that, he did like Singing in the Rain, which he's best known for. But he did another movie called An American in Paris, my favorite. And he plays this like former GI that's a painter. And this applies to business and marketing too. And he goes, this college student's like, oh, I want to discuss your work with you. And he's like, I don't want to discuss my work. I'm not interested in your opinion of my work. If you say something nice, it won't make me feel any better. And if you don't do it at all, if you don't say anything nice, it'll bother me. And I always love that quote because I think that's very much how we need to approach our businesses and our lives. And in this topic, it's how do we talk to people? Because right now we're specifically talking about race, but everything that relates to people as individuals. So like there's no black person that wants to discuss their black identity in a way that like we have to explore. Like as black people, we know who we are individually and collectively. What matters most to us is like, can we actually do whatever we showed up to do with you and actually grow in that? We can talk about what we're going to do next as friends, business partners, customers, this, that, the other. And the same with women. Like, no woman needs to just discuss how she feels about her body or the choices she makes as a mother, as a friend, as a lover, this, that, the other. And on any paradigm, that's always the case. And we know who we are and how we are. It's just whether or not you want to accept that and be part of the conversations we're leading in other areas of our life as that identity.
Wow. Great stuff, Max. I'll tell you one thing that really, really struck me about how this thread evolved. And again, you wrote a really thoughtful, intelligent thread starter, and it took all kinds of amazing twists and turns. Some of them were uncomfortable. And, at one point somebody posted, this thread is getting nasty and maybe it should be closed, right?
Oh, yeah. Your response to that was just like what blew me away. But go on, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And I said, I basically said, no one here is looking to hurt someone else. And, censorship is oppression. And if we don't have discussions like this, we'll never understand each other and grow. And fortunately, it didn't, as the leader of the community, of course, I was monitoring very closely and concerned. But man, as always, I've been so proud of the community because even though it got a little uncomfortable, nobody resorted to name calling. Nobody, it's just we were able to try to understand each other and grow.
Yeah.
And so one thing I want to talk about, I'll tell you a moment, and I should probably have a separate conversation with Lauren, because it was her comment that I think struck me most when she said, it's the silence sometimes that is so loud.
Yes.
If you're affected by this issue in a deep way, and people you look up to don't acknowledge it in any way whatsoever, sometimes that says more to you than if they had said at least something. And
wow.
It struck me because my take on these situations is twofold. On one instance, I feel like, actually it's threefold. One is, I feel like if I'm going to say something about this publicly, I need to do a lot of homework. I'm a 7 on the Colby and the Fact Finder. And I'm sorry, I'm an 8. I'm an 8-4-4-4. That means I need a lot of facts before I feel comfortable moving ahead. And I usually, and this probably sounds bad, but just literally don't have the time to reach the kind of data input I need to feel like I can form a valuable opinion that I can stand behind.
That sounds
right?
Terrible. Absolutely.
Well,
I'm going to call you out on that.
Max is a quick start.
And all three of us are in the Cobley. So you guys have been listening to this. Definitely, it's beautiful. It's my favorite framework for understanding what drives you.
Yeah. So real quickly, let me say, and then when Lauren pointed out that, people she looks up to and pays for advice and gives credence to on the topic of marketing, some of those people, their silence on these topics that are so affecting so much of our society offended her in some ways.
How does that work? That bugs the hell out of me when I read that, by the way. And maybe I'm an asshole. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. I have a couple thoughts. And again, I don't want to derail. We brought Max here to talk. He has a lot of thoughts to share, but I really want to hear what he has to say about this. On one hand, Jonathan, you could say, now, wait a minute. It's not my job or my place to, if I don't want to weigh in on this, I don't have to say anything. And it's really the safer play if you're not a politically charged person or anything like that, to just have your thoughts and your discussions privately. Is no obligation to have them publicly. But you know what? What it showed me was these are things I do care about, and to know that people that I also care about who are so affected by it, wonder how I feel about it. To me, it creates an obligation that I didn't feel I had before, at least to pay closer attention to what's happening and at least form my thoughts around it in a way that I may or may not choose to express, but make sure that I give the time. For instance, I did not watch the video, the famous Facebook video.
Oh, no, I will not. Philando Castile, yeah.
Well, I watched it now because of this discussion. I felt I need to. But I'm like you, man. I did not want to see it. There's enough. I don't watch CNN for the same reason. I don't want to see a loop of tragic, terrible stuff happening over and over. I read the paper to understand what happened, and I just don't need those images floating around my head. I got too much good stuff to do. That's a choice I make. But at the same time, there's if you're going to be part of an evolution, and an evolution is really needed here, we're going to have to, I think, expose ourselves to some stuff that's uncomfortable. And so that's kind of my
Here's
evolution.
what it is, though. It's not about exposing yourself to things that are uncomfortable because you're already exposed. It's whether or not we're going to do anything with that energy, because I didn't have to watch that video to be exposed to it. I actually incidentally heard it on one of my favorite podcasts, and it's like, great, I didn't want to listen to this, and now I'm actually listening to it. And we all have the news feeds. We all have friends. It's in the newspapers. Like, even if you don't want to be a part of this, you already are, because you're born into a community where it exists. And my thing is to challenge you, you both, not to concern with, oh, it's not my responsibility, it's not my role, or I'm not political. It's not your job to talk about these issues and take a stand on these issues, although that would be awesome. It's to say, wow, I have customers that are seeing the same thing I'm seeing, and they feel a certain way about it, but probably the same way that I do. Let me reach out to them and just say, hey, how are you feeling? The past week, 5 officers died, a man was shot, and for an unprovoked reason, and his daughter was in the back seat, and this other guy was shot in the legs when he was fully complying with the. So it's like, I don't need you to have an opinion on that. I just want you to check in and
acknowledge it.
Say, hey, how are you feeling this week? It's a 1-sentence email. We could all send that to our list today, and that's what's unsettling. Is that we do a lot of business with people, me especially, and I'm spending all my money on people that aren't necessarily acknowledging that I exist. And in your case, that's why the episode was so powerful, because I didn't ask you to talk about police brutality, but you did. It's like, it was another validation that this guy that I look up to, that I work with, that I admire, that I tell other people about, that I'm always like evangelizing for, is talking about things without me needing him to talk about it. And it was just, it's very beautiful, because now I want to double down on my investments in Copy Chief. And that's the added benefit. But fundamentally, we're in this together. We're a community. Responsibility isn't given or taken. It's a part of who you are as soon as you're a part of any one group. So it's like, how can I help my peer? How can I understand what they're going through? How can we talk about our feelings, not why things are happening, but like how we feel and what we can do with that energy?
Wow. I want to hear Jonathan's thoughts on this, but
I'm on the other side. I don't feel the same as you guys, and it's totally cool, but I don't feel like bringing any of that into my world. So I'm totally on the other. I try to stay away from the news. I didn't see most of this stuff on the news feed, so I stay away from stuff like that. I don't comment on politics or religion at all. But it's just the way I roll, and I never felt like I needed to check in on that kind of stuff, because I don't feel like that relates to the business side. But I get where you're coming from, Max. I see what you're saying. You know, we're all together. We might have the same opinion. It bonds people to you. For me, there's stuff that I just don't talk about, and nobody's going to make me talk about it.
And certainly, and I'm not going to force you to do that. But the other side of it is, if you were on the street and you were witness to someone being harassed, whether it was police or otherwise, what would your initial reaction be?
Oh, I would get that. If I'm right there in the middle of that, I'm going to do something.
And that's what it is. And that's all I'm talking about. Regardless of what platform you do it, I fully recognize my leadership role. So regardless of what context I'm in, I'm going to exercise that. That's why I started the post to begin with. And I don't care what people say or don't say. But what matters is this. And actually, we can talk about the stats. Everyone wants to bring up stats, reports, and this, that about police brutality isn't good or bad, as everyone thinks. And it's like, statistically, all violent crimes globally and nationally, you can look this up with the FBI and CIA, come from 3% or affect 3% of the population, meaning 97% of us are not committing crimes. The way it's talked about in the media, it seems like it's everywhere. So fundamentally, there's only like 3 out of every 100 people that are actually going out and doing criminal things. And they're enabled by the rest of us that aren't talking up, calling them out as they're doing the crimes. So if you're on the street, someone harasses a woman, someone's harassing a black person, a cop, just a civilian, whomever, and you're not saying anything, you're not doing anything, but you're like, oh, that's so disgusting in your mind, or maybe quietly to your friends, we're part of that problem. And we're enabling others to think that it's okay and continue. So regardless of whether you're doing this in your business or not, it's important to recognize that, hey, I have a role in this, and what am I willing to do in those spaces where I am comfortable? And when I'm not uncomfortable, what can I learn to maybe help someone or put someone else in that position to like talk about it for me or with me, so I do feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. And then this is all marketing 101. Like the way we convert as marketers is to sympathize and empathize with our customers.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be in any direct way, like weight loss. We can still talk about these things with weight loss. I have Kalyani Pardeshi. She suffered postpartum depression, and that's the other side of the spectrum, which is health issues. I am sickle cell anemia, and I talk about that in my work. And in her case, she was dealing with postpartum depression, and she can talk about that with her work because women can empathize with that. And they can connect with her, and she's converting more people.
So, I can see the discussion already, and maybe this is an interesting thing to add. I'd like to hear from people where they stand on their obligation to reach out. And I don't know how many people are in a role where they feel like they're looked to as a leader. But, some people, I see both sides of it. Some people go, yeah, well, what don't I have to remark on? Right? Do I have to announce my political affiliation? Do I have to scan the news and make sure and I think before it gets silly like that, let me just say what struck me about it was this is obviously something I was thinking about. I'm noticing, I'm talking to my family, my kids about, and the fact that it didn't occur to me to step out and just say a little something, or specifically reach out to people who I should know that it's hurting and that it's important to, was a great lesson to me.
Absolutely.
Even privately. That's right, Max. And so that, to me personally, that was a great lesson. And I'd be interested to hear how other people feel. Let's just say this. If someone's listening and they're kind of having some awakenings around this, or this is maybe hopefully helping them say, well, what can I say or do? Because, I'm not a racist person. Of course, they don't feel like they have to go around you don't go around announcing, hey, I'm not racist.
Some of my best friends are Puerto Ricans, I swear.
Well, what from a black man's point of view in this business of marketing, which is still dominated by white guys.
Yeah.
What's one thing we can do or think about and be conscious of that would kind of help?
That's a good question. And it's the one thing we don't do a lot in social media in general, online. It's to remember that there's someone on the other side of the screen that you're posting with, whether it's to your business or to your email list, in your marketing, or one-on-one in Facebook, this, that, the other, that for everything that you post, there's someone who's just like you, thoughts, feelings, opinions, emotions, concerns, fears, biases, that is reading what you're writing. And when we're really connecting with people that way, everything I do is relationship-based. And so when we're connecting with people that way, we're connecting as people instead of prospects and cattle and customers, this, that, the other. Like, we're one-on-one. So if you want to be mindful without taking a stance, at least just think of the other person reading.
I like it. Let's end there. Max Rouzier, thank you, my friend, for being with us and, taking on a tough topic. And I think hopefully, I'm sure this will spark a discussion. There are people who totally disagree and think this is ridiculous, and that reaching out to somebody and making an assumption that they have thoughts or opinions about hot topic things could be potentially dangerous.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's all kinds of interesting discussion still to happen around this. But I just thought, let's start somewhere, just because it's got to be talked about. We have to just communicate more and better. So thanks for helping us do that, Max. And that's a wrap, Jonathan, for this one.
Let me give a shout out to Max. Hopefully I get your website right. Thatmanmax.com. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then the Top of Mind newsletter, which right. I'm a big fan of. Very, very great work.
Thatmanmax.com. Thank you, Max. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Chiefs, for tuning in, and we will be back in your earbuds next time. You've been listening to Copy Chief Radio. Thank you for tuning in. If you're digging what we are laying down for you, then your next step is to go over to iTunes, type in Copy Chief Radio into the search bar, and when you find the show, subscribe. We will be back in your earbuds next week.
This is the podcastfactory.com.